Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Fetters Fireside. Today, I have with me Sherjil Ozair, who's an AI researcher turned founder, and he's going to be speaking to us about his experience around breaking Fetters 1 to 5, or stream entry and breaking reactivity, and how this has impacted his well being. So, Sherjil, I'm really happy to
Hey,
have you here. How are you doing?
pretty good. Thanks for having me. Doing really well. Incidentally, I came into Fetters by watching Yanda's podcast, like with you. I think that was the first podcast, and it was helped me learn about you and then get into Fetter breaking myself. And it's been phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
it's a nice closing of the loop with me coming back to the pod.
Amazing, amazing. So let's start with your prior experience, right? Like most people, they have a place where they start their meditation journey. What was yours? What were the things you've tried before fairs? What were the things you've experimented with before?
So I have a pretty long meditation journey, and most of the early stuff was useful, so and so, but not as much. And then more of the recent stuff became much more useful. It actually started with like things like Sam Harris and the Waking Up podcast and the Waking Up like app, basically mindfulness exercises. Even did some Headspace back in the day when I was like, I don't know, 18 or something like that. And but all of them were somewhat useful, like but like not they didn't really keep me, and the impact was not that profound. Sam Harris's like stuff was quite useful, but then he himself went into like a political angle, and I kind of stopped following him. And then it's kind of, it sort of laid dormant. I was focusing on my career and everything. And then like learned sort of more about jhanas, like, so this is by the Journey folk, Stephen and Alex and others. The just like started seeing it mentioned on Twitter a lot, like Nikam Ratra, for example. And just like, and then, happened to actually go to one of the retreats. And that was like really transformative. Like experience like the first few jhanas, like, pretty soon out in the retreat. I'll get into describing them, but let me finish the sort of the broad overview. Actually, before that, there was a brief time I also did a Vipassana retreat. Like this is the
Hmm.
Goenka Vipassana retreat. I always knew that there's something in meditation. Like it's just I just only had heard about it sort of secondhand, right? Like others would talk about it nicely, but I was like, okay, but yeah, my mindfulness exercise is not doing going anywhere. So I tried the Vipassana one as well. I couldn't finish it. I
Yeah.
put 3-4 days to it, and I was trying to do it, but it was just the whole thing is a bit rigid, and like they have very specific ways of doing things, which and they don't want to change it at all. And I was just not able to fit. And so actually after 4 days I left. But actually it kind of, it did tell me that, okay, there's something here. Like, I mean, even though I was not able to experience it fully. And so I knew that I needed to do it my way. And so I started like, exploring a little bit of what are other ways to do it. And so there, I found basically Journey and Jhana. So yeah, so went to two retreats actually. So in the first retreat itself had, jhana experiences. We can get into that, and then after that did another retreat to kind of further solidify it a little bit. And then after that, what I noticed was that in the retreats I would like have these jhana experiences, but like after I come back, that for a few days I would continue to be able to access them. But then after that,
Yeah.
I was just not able to. Like I was got busy with work or got busy with other things. And so that's when I started noticing that some people were talking about it on Twitter, and then the podcast with Yanda that about Fetters and how it's like just much more direct, right? Like it doesn't need like hours of practice, and but it's kind of very similar and like analogous to jhanas, and almost like what you get out of them is the same thing almost, but with a very different method,
Hmm.
almost like a dual method, like and so yeah, I obviously reached out to you and we started practicing, and that's been like transformational as well. The big difference between, I think, jhanas are quite deep experiences, and Fetters, like I think they're much more accessible. So I think in some sense they're in that way they're deeper because I stay with them, or I'm able to use them more in my day to day, right? It's
Yeah.
like as easy as being reminded of a concept and like just spending a little bit of time with that concept for like a few minutes. And that like can completely change my next few hours.
Yeah.
And so that's, yeah, it's just much more practical. But yeah, that's sort
Yeah.
of a rough overview of like my meditation experience.
Amazing, amazing. And of course, we've mentioned Fetters, and a lot of the people that will watch the podcast will not necessarily have the background. And by Fetters, we mean, let's call them conceptual lenses, which we layer on top of our sense experience, which give rise to suffering, resistance, all the bad emotional things, or all the bad ways in which we resist our emotional experience, right? And we basically addressed Ferrers 1 to 5 together. And of course, you dropped the 6th on your own as well. Let's first talk a bit about Ferrers 1 to T, which in more traditional sense, they call it stream entry. How would you call your experience before and after? You know, like sometimes by Ferrers 1 to 3, yes, it's like, okay, what change is your relation to your immediate experience? There is identification with the doership. You identify with the doership of the senses, of emotions, of thoughts. But what was your experience before and after with it? Like, how would you describe it?
Yeah. And this is a hard one because like I also had the jhana experiences, which also kind of help break the fetters. But yeah, okay. So I would say I would just combine it and say, like, if I imagine myself like years ago, like my perception and like, yeah, how would I describe my perception and identity? I think one thing is like there was a strong feeling of like there's someone in my head like kind of controlling me, or like, that's, obviously that someone is me. And this idea that I'm inside here and I'm experiencing the world, and I can like I can change things by wanting it strongly. I mean, that's one way like to describe it. And also like that I'm kind of here and the world is over there. Like
Yeah.
this idea, while okay, and when I say it like this, it's very almost sounds nonsensical, because what do you mean? But I'll try to like contrast it with how I feel like now. And so now I feel I'm sort of one of the entities here, right? So
Yeah.
there's more of a feeling of like I'm kind of hanging out with all these things around me and all these other people around me. There's a bit more of a like a third person, perhaps, like a bit more objective view about yourself. And there's a much more reduced feeling of you are separate from your surroundings. Like, so I'm kind of more immersed in my surroundings, which kind of also means that like I'm also a bit more there's also a bit more like, for lack of a better word, passive. I feel much more passive about the present moment. Like, I don't have to do anything to do things. I can just
Yeah.
be, and the present moment will evolve, right? Like, for example, right now I'm talking, like I don't have to try to talk. I don't have to strive to talk. It will just happen because I'm here and I'm talking to you,
Yeah.
right? So I think, yeah, that feeling, like, and there's a graspiness for like, this is me and I need to do things in a certain way. Like that sort of is alleviated like quite a bit. Yeah, that's my best attempt to answer the
Yeah.
question.
Amazing, amazing. And of course, after we deal with the first 1 to 3, which are more about identity, we have first 4 and 5 attachment and aversion, which fortunately or unfortunately deal with the trickier stuff called emotions and reactivity, right? And prior to reactivity, or rather before dropping reactivity, but just immediately after stream entry, people actually start noticing more and more the way they're grasping at experience, right? What were the things you noticed at first you were grasping at, or what were the situation where you're noticing grasping at, and what was the suffering about, right? Like, what was the thing that it seemed to be struggling with just accepting? What subjects, what categories of experiences?
Yeah, no. So yeah, I think 4 and 5 are, they're much stronger in my memory. And like I feel like, as Ferris, like, I mean, I think a lot of us experience them a lot, like, and so 4 is more about this like craving for like craving for things, and 5 is like having aversion for, making sure that you don't have something, right? Like, so for example, pain. So like, yeah, I think this has been the big transformative experience. Like, and so before, I think I would almost always I would have something I'm craving for, right? Like whether
Yep.
it's, I mean, I'm like a high functioning, so like it would be something in my career or like some kind of goal, like some kind of professional goal, or even like intellectual curiosity or something like that. Would be like, I want to train this model, or I want to do this research, or I want to raise this much funding, or like it, whatever the thing of the month is, it would be like there was this almost, obsession, but like not just obsession. I think obsession can often be good, but this is obsession without any awareness, with sort of obsession to the tune of ignoring everything else and having a very collapsed kind of awareness on just one thing, and kind of losing the forest for the trees for that one thing. In like more, I mean, in simplistic terms, like a simpler example is just like having a craving for like candy, or having like a craving for a certain type of food, but it's not just that. It's more even cravings for like a certain person to like you, right? Or having like a craving for a certain like a professional goal, that like something you want to do today. And and yeah, so and after kind of breaking 4 and 5, like it's much more, it's not that you don't want to do that anymore, you still want to do that, but you relax a lot around it. You want to do that, but you're also aware of that thing, but also other things around you. And actually, like that's actually really useful, because often the way you will achieve success is not a straight line into to that goal. There might be something else which leads you to it, that you something you may want to work on. Greatness cannot be planned. There's lots of, in modern times, is our luck surface area is a big factor into our success. So you kind of want to keep your eyes open
Yeah.
to your surroundings, because who knows who may be around you, or what ideas may strike you. Like, so it's just, so it removes that kind of extreme strong collapsed awareness craving for the thing. And like aversion is kind of just the opposite of craving. So they're, in some sense, they're very similar things. Like aversion could be like, I don't want my company to die, right? Like, or like, let's say that actually, like, let's say you're training a model, and the loss kind of starts going up or something. Like, you're like, I really wanted this model to work. You sort of almost having this dread kind of in your, when you run an experiment, you're dreading it. Like, you're dreading that your model won't work because your cute idea, like your favorite idea, is not going to work. And so often actually people don't even run that experiment because they're afraid of the failure.
Yeah.
And and that aversion to that failure of that model not working, which is actually in research, it's a common thing. Most experiments don't work, but you have to kind of go get past it to be able to run that experiment and have that 10% chance of it working. So just for the machine learning people out there, this may be useful.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Now I have two questions that follow up on this. And the first one is, how did your baseline, whether you call it baseline well-being, baseline happiness, change as you went through the process? And then afterwards, how did it change your relationship to productivity, to goals and achievements, and even to agency? Because in our part of Twitter, agency is a big deal. Everyone wants more agency. And I feel like most people I end up working with, they're somewhat concerned that if they were not to contract or have some aversion to not getting their goals, that would somehow result in them not getting their goals. So what is your experience? Again, the first part being with your baseline well-being.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say my baseline well-being has increased tremendously. Like, I mean, at least like 10x, and it's it has been life-changing. Like, I mean, people can see it, people say it, like they're like, yeah, you look happy, like, and they ascribe it to all different. They say like, oh, it's because all sorts of various things. But yeah, I know that I know the real reason. And I think material things, or kind of like extrinsic things, are often not the real sources of happiness, because of hedonic adaptation. Like, you just get over it. I'm probably one of the most privileged people in the planet, like, but like, like a few years ago I was unhappy for some reason or
Yeah.
another. I can just like ignore all the nice things I have and just be like, no, I don't have that thing, and like that, and that's making me unhappy. It just completely like decoupled whether I have something or don't have something from my baseline happiness. And just like my baseline happiness is just I'm just happy. Like, and yeah, that's it's just it's a great it's amazing. Like it's, and it can often be a very small thing. I think the way, it's sometimes hard to detect because it just increases your baseline happiness throughout, like, significantly, and so it adds up to something very substantial.
Hmm.
But day to day, the way you're reacting to things is just slightly different, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so, for example, someone said something weird to you and you did not snap back at them. You were just like, you made a joke out, you just reacted in a humorous way, and that conversation then went in a very much better direction than if you had just replied in anger or something. So yeah, much better baseline happiness. Can't be more grateful and thankful. I mean, there's a it kind of deserves like more time actually. Like, so one way I describe it is that the world kind of opens up to you. And I think when we are in this like collapsed awareness, like we're kind of not even experiencing the world and the present moment. And when you sort of relax and loosen up a little, like you just start noticing the how the trees are amazing, how the weather is awesome, how the air feels great, and you're grateful for the air, and how the opportunity to be in like this great city, the great city of San Francisco, and be working on like AI, which is one of the, you just sort of start counting your blessings more, and it's sort of the anti-hedonic adaptation. I mean, honestly, as technological progress is happening, this is like a key antidote that's needed. I mean, we need something for the anti-hedonic adaptation to be able to survive in these, like, I mean, in like a very different in the very different situations that we are in and are will continue to be in. So yeah. But the second point is, what about productivity and things like that? And yeah,
Yeah.
I think you say this, and I've seen others say this, is that, yeah, there's no connection. Like, I think you you can be as productive, you can be even more productive, and yeah, I think that's true. Like, as in, you still have choice, right? I mean, I think there's a misconception that you don't. I mean, yeah, you have a lot of choice, and you can now, instead of being forced to be productive, right? I mean, the sort of the previous sort of setup is that you're unhappy if you don't reach a goal, and you're obsessing and craving for that goal, and which forces you to kind of grind and work hard and go towards that goal. The new approach is you're happy with the present, but you
Yeah.
want, like, you want to reach this goal, and so therefore you set up systems and processes to like and to reach that goal. So in a lot of ways, that's a much better way to do it anyway, right? I think just craving for something is not the best way to achieve that something. Often you have to be much more systematic about it, and maybe there's a roundabout way of reaching that goal. So I think, yeah, I think just in it's yeah, so it's better for your productivity and efficiency and everything. I would point out a small issue that some people may have, which is that if they are so habituated to using their kind of emotional angst and obsession and craving to achieve their goals, like that's kind of all they've done for like years, then they will find a bit odd that, like, wait, now they're happy without
Yeah.
anything. So they'll kind of be like, oh, I don't need to do anything now. So there'll be a bit of like, because it's a very different experience and situation for them. So there'll be some learning to do, but they'll, I think, like, I mean, it probably happened to me as well at some point, but it's a very short lived period, and then you sort of recreate your motivation. You're like, yeah, no, I want to do this, and for some people that answer may be very different. Like, maybe they were working on in some corporate job which doesn't make sense, and they decided that they want to open a coffee shop or something. Like, so for some people it could be drastic. For me, it was not. It was just a reaffirmation of like, I freaking love working on AI, and I want to do it. I want to continue doing it. And now
Yeah.
it's just much more systematic, and I don't know, plan and sort of, it's much more thoughtful, and perhaps there's an element of third person objective planning for like for myself, as opposed to like a personal angst. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Again, agency wise, on a practical level, actually, because you mentioned a bit the last function on experiments. What do you notice around agency, as in making things happen? Like how much faster do you notice around work? Because I'm guessing you still work quite a lot, but do you notice a jump in making things happen on shorter time frames, let's say?
That's a great question. So there are a few factors like or a few things which impact agency. One, I think y- just sort of your awareness and attention expands so much more. You notice more things and you kind of present more. If you're just obsessed about the next thing you have to implement or something like that, then you're gonna zone out many things. And so and you know, obviously if you've worked on your Fetters 4 and 5, you will notice more things. And so I think that just creates more crosstalk between, you know, there's more connections to make, and you're kind of living life like live, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard to explain concept, but like, you know, I think that's a key thing. I think a lot of people, I mean, well, I think before kind of breaking these fetters, I would describe myself as living life a little bit on a formula, like living life with, okay, in the next 1 hour, I'm going to do this. And then kind of just doing it like a machine while after breaking the fetters, you're kind of living actively on the go, sort of you're making decisions live, you're thinking live. And so I think that's like, I think, yeah, these are maybe potentially two different ways that your agency and your, I guess in some sense, your frame rate is much higher. You're sort of observing what's happening and reacting to that and making a decision. It doesn't have to be like an impulsive reactive decision, but you are accumulating information much more with a higher frame rate, and potentially also adjusting and changing decisions fractally, like even low level decisions, but even high level decisions much more dynamically. So your temporal resolution is becoming much more, like, you know, is higher, but also your spatial resolution is also higher. You're not just about that one thing or the next thing. You're allowing yourself to listen more, see more, think about more, make connections between more disparate things. So that's you know, both space and time is kind of becoming bigger here.
Amazing. About goals, to the extent you can share, right? Um, do you feel like they shrunk? The goals are the same. The goals are bigger. How do you feel about them right now? Now that you no longer crave them, what's your relationship to setting goals and making things in life?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question as well. So just like looking at the one off like anecdote of my experience, like the goal has become much bigger, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of like, yeah, incomparably bigger. And so and I asked myself like why that is, because I do think it's because of this depersonalization, right? Like, I mean, I'm now not like doing it to get something out of for myself, right? Like, it's not about like, I don't have this narrative going on in my head that you need to make personal wealth, like, you know. And it's fine for a lot of people that maybe the goal that they decide to work on. Like, for me, it became a bit decoupled. I was like, wait, you actually, you know, you're fine. Like, you have enough. Do you really need, you know, like, you know, I don't know, jet planes or something? I mean, do you need lots of luxury? Like, and I realize that I don't care about it. I like little
yeah.
things and things which are free. So then why are you doing what you're doing? Like, and then it just became about much more bigger and about something about the world itself, right? Like, so I want to make sure that our next generation AIs are good and useful and not just generating slop. So it's a mission which is kind of, it's not as dependent, it's not a statement about me. It does not, and it's since it's bigger, more people can engage in it. And yeah, like, I don't know if that was helpful, but yeah, it just, because you decouple from personal craving, actually allows you to engage with bigger missions in an authentic way, right? You're not just pretending to engage in them, but you actually, there's nothing smaller or lower that you are seeking.
Yeah, amazing. One of the things that happens, right, or doesn't happen, is putting things in perspective or framing them in terms of money. Here's what I mean by that. at times we kind of have this notion that if I were to make more money, just like you said, we would somehow be way happier, right? And San Francisco is oftentimes the kind of place where people think that if I were a billionaire, I would be so much happier, right? I've done this with other people, and we sort of try to quantify this in terms of how it feels right now, like over your lifetime. What do you say that this feels valuable to you? I don't mean actual money. It's like, what would you have expected to be worth financially or to be worth over your lifetime to have this level of happiness? What number would you put on that?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, so as you mentioned, the connection between money and happiness. Like, I mean, there's this one anecdote to mention. I guess, I mean, I saw this. There's this DHH podcast, with I think with Lex or someone like that, and he just talked about, like, he's obviously made a lot of money, and he's okay. That one time I bought a car and raced through it. That was great, but that's about it. That all the wealth he accumulated, all the money, like, wasn't really, like, it didn't really do something great, other than like these very small things. And so his main sort of suggestion was like, please don't sacrifice your family and your health and your friends, and like, I mean, those things which are harder to replace, harder to obtain, those things matter much more. Like, I really wish you had not sacrifice all of these things just to earn some money, because that's not going to be able to give you enough happiness. Like, so yeah, I think that strikes me as very true. Like, because the recent acquisition I made, like, there was some windfall as well, nothing too crazy, but like, it did allow me to sort of not worry about money. Like, I come from an Indian background. Like, I didn't have, you know sort of growing up, like, it was something that was on the mind. Like, I don't come from a rich, like, family or something. And it actually allowed me to look back and, like, evaluate my decision making throughout in my early sort of career. And so much of it was just like, kind of, where can I earn more money? Like, and sure, it's nice. There was a bit of, like, 30% intellectual curiosity, and like the other things were factors too. But a big chunk of it was, how do I become financially secure? And it's really, like, kind of clouds your judgment. And, like, if you have this strong, like, maybe emotional connection to having money, or like an aversion towards not having money, and like, not being poor, it kind of can just become the only thing you care about, and just make you make bad decisions as well. And so I think, actually having made like some money is good too. It's a fast, it's a shortcut to kind of, that's not the motivation anymore. And so then you can expand, and there's richness in the world which cannot is the money number, net worth number, it does not do any justice to that, right? And like, I to all my friends, and to pretty much everyone, I wish that for them, right, that they can actually experience the world in all its sort of richness. And so i i I think making just a little bit of money to be financially secure is one way. But I think even then you probably need to do some of the work that Fetters allow you to do, to learn and understand that actually happiness is not correlated with money, right? I think, like, there's the things that give me happiness right now are things which were accessible to me like years ago.
Yeah.
But it was the obsession for goals, and whether monetary goals or professional goals, like that was kind of clouded, sort of, yeah, like, not allowing me to, like, actually experience that happiness. And to the last question about, like, how much, what's the trade-off here?
Yeah, what's the number? Put a number
What
on it. I have my
Yeah.
own number over a lifetime, over a year, over whatever, but I'm curious what your number would be over like decades or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, so it's hard for me to give very large numbers, because I don't have, like, those numbers. And so like, so I can just say, oh, $1 billion, but like, who knows what having $1 billion is like. But yeah, it's really, it's a largest number I can emotionally feel, right? Which is, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like it's somewhere between 10 to 50 like million, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So like, I would rather, like, let's say that if you came with this hypothetical experiment that, okay, I'll give you 10 or whatever, something like that, but you cannot have access to this state of being, right? Like you
Yeah.
are constantly fettered, right? Like you're going to be worrying, you're going to be suffering, like, the way I was, a few years ago. Yeah, that's a terrible deal, right? Like I would not take it, because that money does not actually buy much. So this like is extremely valuable. Like, it's kind of hard to even put numbers on it. I mean, actually, framing it that way, that you will never be able to access an unfettered state, I think that number is probably much higher, right? It's
Yeah.
probably like, probably in the like probably all of the money in the world, or something crazy like that. Yeah, because I think, just you see these extremely rich people, like, they still buy the same iPhones, they buy effectively the same cars, like they go to the same places. There's not like a lot that planet Earth can provide to an extremely rich person. Like, what they're left is like buying these companies, and kind of, that's it. So I think, yeah, there isn't like, to like, maybe people who are maybe earlier in their career and so on. I think there isn't really that much here in the, like, oh, there's, oh, once you are a billionaire, you're gonna be able to do so much more. Nah, not really. I think a billionaire is probably envious of the life that, I don't know, like a teenager, and who's just having a good time. Yeah, like, so I mean, it's not to go extreme in either way, but like, just like, I think being a bit more mindful and like balanced about, like, being, I think deluding yourself into thinking that you will only be happy once you've made tremendous amounts of money is like a surefire way of being extremely unhappy, not just now, but even later. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, and on numbers, I definitely agree with you. I've posed this question to myself, which is, someone comes in, I give you back your experience from 2 years ago. I give you this amount of money, and the amount of money is, I never had that money, but I would not want the money. I would
Yeah.
rather just be this and have the happiness. Perfect. One thing that it comes often in conversation around being ready for the process, around, is this for me? Is this going to work? And I think oftentimes this kind of have to do with identity, like what we think is accessible. Let's say you saw Yanda as well, Yanda, because this or that, like it would work for him, but what if it wouldn't work for me? What were the things, or how did you see your readiness, or maybe you had a different approach, which is, oh, I sort of like, the loss is this amount, but the upside is this amount. So the expected value is so big that it doesn't even matter. It's still worth a shot. How do you see giving the process a shot? Because
Yeah.
it's one of the most prevalent questions.
Yeah. So I do think that like, there is like certain groups of people are kind of ready for it, and certain groups are not. And I have thought about like what makes a difference. And I think it's not it's something very simple. I think it's just curiosity about your own brain and mind, and like how it functions, right? Like, I think I've noticed that there are like people, and like, I mean, and that's completely natural and fine. Like, it's not anything bad, but like, they're focused on something else. Like, they're focused on, like, they want to be a great software engineer, or they have certain like extrinsic goals they're thinking about. And how their own mind works, like how their own brain works, how their thinking works, how their feelings and emotions work, is just not something they have thought about. And also, they're not like curious about it. I think if that is true, like, then, like, I think sort of going through the Fetters exercise is a bit inaccessible. Like, you kind of bounce off in the first, as well, because there'll be so much just talk about your own brain, and you'll be like, I'm not interested. But I think there's a couple of things to understand here. I think for those people, like, I think, yeah, your brain and your mind is a very important part of yourself, and it's in your life experience is going to be primarily, it's going to be dominated by like your ability to use your most important, like, like, organ, right? So this is something like many successful, like, I think, like, for, I mean, Demis, for example, talks about in Demis and Lex podcast at the end, he said like that, actually, for young people, the advice I would give is like to get to know yourself, right? Like know how you work, know your brain, know your strengths and weaknesses and tendencies. And n- I don't know if he was talking about meditation. I think, but probably not. But it rhymes with this work of like becoming curious about your own brain. And not also not treating it as like just a given. I think everyone's very different. Like I think you can't learn about your brain by reading a book about how the human brain works, right? I think it's not actually very sort of I don't know though. It's not really a scientific exercise. Like it's more. It is subjective. It's still scientific. I think you can do experiments and there's truth, and you can
Yeah.
learn very clear. You can run experiments to like learn that I am more like this and less like that, right? You can learn, but it's not. It's something you have to do yourself, and no one else can do the work for you, because you have access to your own brain. So yeah, I think I would just recommend. I think yeah, that's most of all the the a lot of the problems you're having, a lot of the the success you've had and the failures, everything is impacted very hugely by your ability to your self awareness, your understanding of yourself, your brain. So spend some time with it, like be curious about it, introspect, note, right? And that then like I think and you actually the mindfulness exercises by whatever Headspace, like Sam Harris, like stuff, waking up, like they are useful to kind of get like like someone there. Um not they're not perfect, but they help. And then I think someone can pick up Fetters. Obviously, jhanas are even better because you sort of just it's kind of like you have this deep immersive experience in altered states of mind, and that is the strongest proof someone can have that it's worth spending time and doing this work. And also it's not just I think there's also some in our circles, there's a fair bit of scientism, which is if it does not come from a science book or if it does not come from a paper, like it's probably whatever, it's probably woo woo. And it's a fair bias because a lot of stuff in the world is woo woo, but like
Yeah.
this is one of those things where it's the science of yourself. And obviously there's people like Brian Johnson are also like kind of doing it, the science he's doing that no one else can do, that only one person can only do with their own sort of body. I think there's the Brian Johnson kind of program you can do for your brain, right? Which
Yeah.
is figure out what it needs, what ingredients does it need, what consumption patterns it needs. Does it need Twitter in the morning, or maybe it does, probably not. Does it need 20 minutes of silence? Does it need writing? Does it need talks with friends every once in a while? So it could be many different things, right? Like, but I think investing in that is some of the most some of the most valuable things you could be doing.
Amazing, amazing. I have two more questions, and then we can wrap it up. The first one would be more along the lines of some things, because we do have a lot of friends that have vaguely showed interest, but maybe they weren't necessarily convinced that this is right for them. What exactly do you encourage for them? Of course, curiosity is what they need. What would be your advice? What would be your almost pitch as to why and how this could be impactful for basically all or any place in their lives? Like, what would you say that it would be?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so it's one of those things where everyone has different pre-existing experience, right? Like, so some people luckily have figured this out. Maybe they were naturally born with some capabilities where they have a better control of their mind and so on. And some people are starting, so it's hard to give a very general advice. um but the most important thing is like I would say is like that, like there is something here if you give it a shot, right? And the way to give it a shot is there multiple ways of doing that. One is just like do some research yourself, like learn about it more, um and then like two, like talk to Michael, for talk to him for like do one session with him. And I mean, and then the way you do it in the first session itself, it's very clear that there is something to learn here. And so yeah, so I would strongly suggest coming to you and actually doing at least one sort of 30-minute exercise. It's also not one of those things where oh yeah, sit for 15 minutes and do nothing. It's not one of those. It kind of is, I think some people call this method direct pointing, right? Like it's a very
Yeah,
direct way of like getting to getting to the candies, the getting to the outcomes like pretty quickly. Yeah, it's like the return to time investment is like crazy large. But if somehow you're not convinced of that, I think that there are a number of, like, we'll try to put it in the links, but there are a number of these. For example, there's a video of, I think, Clark turning into Superman and back. Like there's these
yeah,
examples of how just the way you, like, just like very these subjective things can completely change a person's aura, right?
yeah,
Like I think in, I think, yeah, the Superman one was like this. I mean, really this confident, like he's standing tall, he's calm. While I think Clark was fidgeting and his awareness was dropped. He was looking down. Like, I mean, just these are. I mean, obviously that's a movie, like or a clip from a movie, but that it's a great sort of demonstration of how you can become something more like the Superman and less like this, a collapsed awareness, fidgeting kind of person. Yeah, like I think there are examples out there. If you try to find them, we'll try to make some of them and put it in the notes. Um,
yeah,
yeah, like and then once you're like a little bit convinced that you should venture here, like I think Michael is one of the best resources to like help you get started. But obviously, a lot of the work is you will be doing yourself. Like I think all Michael would be just kind
yeah,
of guiding you and putting in the right direction.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we haven't necessarily kept track together because at the time I was not doing that, keeping track. Do you have a vague ballpark figure around how much time you practice, like from the start to the dropping in terms of like tens of hours? Any idea of that?
Yeah, I think I know roughly. So 1, 2, 3 was pretty quick. It was
Yeah,
definitely less than 10 hours. Closer to even 2 to 3 hours, maybe,
yeah,
maybe five.
yeah,
And then I think yeah, 4 and 5 were a bit sticky. Like
yeah,
but not that much. Like I think somewhere between 10. I mean, yes, greater than 10 hours. So like maybe around 12 hours or something. The sessions were 1 hour, and we
yeah. Oh
spent.
no, I mean I meant more on your own. I meant more on your own practice, not just our practice. I think our practice was like three months and a half, something like that. But I meant more like what time you had to invest on your own of your own self guidance, let's call it.
So I would say that most of the practice I did was in the sessions with you. And
Yeah,
and like I would refresh like on my own a little bit. Sometimes,
yeah,
I think if my partner would remind me, I would kind of do a refresher,
yeah,
but here and there. But like I don't think ever spent like an hour doing it on my own. So I think whatever progress we made was with you, and the progress we made in those calls was like tremendous. So
yeah,
I think, yeah, it was. So it was just I think it was somewhere between, I mean, so 3.5 months, right? Like, but the
yeah,
actual like sessions were that we did 1 hour, like 1 hour a week, right? So
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
yeah, so that's 12
Like
hours basically,
12,
12 to 15
15
hours.
years, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And then in the meantime, if you got 20, 30 minutes every few
Yeah.
days or not even daily,
Yeah.
probably with your schedule. But yeah,
Yeah. I think the way I kind of like to do meditation a lot in general is that I like to kind of add it to my lived experience as much as possible. Like
yeah,
even this, just like, I think there's, you're taking a cab from one place to another, instead of like filling it with like something like with music or with like talking about pointless things, like you can just close your eyes for a bit, or not, like, and just like be a bit meditative, right? So I think that also helps and adds to like, the progress. Yeah.
yeah. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you for sharing. And of course, the last question would be, what is something that we didn't necessarily get a chance to talk about, but you kind of would prefer sharing, whether this is has to do with your experience, this is something that has to do with others. What is something that maybe you definitely want to get out there about anything, whether it's about how it change you, how it can change you, how it can change others. What would that be?
I mean, yes, probably so many things. We should. I think one thing I realized that we didn't actually get into the details of the practice and
Yeah,
Fetters. Like I think there's lots of things we could talk about more. I'll
Please,
say
please
this one.
mention them. We still have time.
Yeah.
Please mention if there is something in particular that struck you. That would be great. Yeah, whatever is top of mind.
Yeah, I think, I think the way I describe like Ferris practice in general, like the way what it does is like it decouples suffering from like actual experience, right? Like from let's say pain, right? Let's say you are having pain in your body or something like that. You don't have to suffer though. You already have the pain. You are in some sense intrinsically suffering, but you don't have to add additional. The fact that you have a problem should not become an additional problem. Like
Yeah,
and that like I think so when I just say this, like it seems weird, like but that's the key thing that one learns by doing this work, that these two things that you have been thinking are the same are not the same, but they're different things. And so what that means is like then you can just go through life with its ups and downs. Like you can be very happy and very sad, and you can be in pain but not have additional suffering, and you can solve
yeah,
for those pains. You can, like, I think the like crying about the pain is not actually in the path towards solving for that pain or removing that pain. I think so you can be, instead of like instead of going through that grief cycle, of you can sort of just fast forward that grief cycle and just like be in solving mode pretty quickly. So
yeah,
yeah, so I think that's like in the most simplest form, that's how I describe it. Like that it just removes the suffering from the pain, or the additional suffering from pain or any other negative experience. And what I would like to also highlight is that I think life has a lot of these things where dimensions open up which previously were collapsed, right? Like, I mean, this
yeah,
dimension of actually suffering is different from pain, is a new dimension, and you can have them, you can sort of experience both of them or only one of them. And
yeah,
I recommend, like, sort of viewers to like explore that, right? I mean, to not be sort of close-minded or think that this is it. Like, we I think there's a lot of things one can learn about themselves and the human mind and the human condition by being a bit curious about, like, about it, specifically about yourself. And you'll get access to these very new dimensions and new ways of being. um it's not going to be something like, it often can be magical, but it's not crazy magical. It's very, once you access them, they become obvious in hindsight. and
yeah,
and they become like, oh, yeah, of course the brain works this way, like, and but they're not obvious if you have not experienced them. So it requires a little bit of deliberative practice and seeking out to acquire these like skills or even ways of seeing things. But I encourage, like, that this is some of the most valuable things you could be doing, and it's, much more valuable than trying to become like slightly better in your skill or craft. Like, I think, because, yeah, I mean, in these times, like, AI is kind of like now becoming a better software engineer, becoming a better potential researcher as well. Like, there's only, I think, the humans should play to our competitive advantages. Like, we have this beautiful, unique, different like mind. We should learn to use it much better, unfettered and unclobbered by random, like, noise. That's the way to, like, I think that's the way to be in 2026 and the next decade, is to kind of double down
amazing,
on what it is, what is unique about humans. And we're not just these robotic problem solvers or prediction machines. Like, we have some uniqueness in it which is worth being familiar with and mastering. So, yeah.
amazing, amazing. Thank you for sharing all this, Sherjil. Perfect. Now we've basically reached the end of the conversation. Thank you so much, Sherjil, for hopping in, for sharing it with everyone, and especially with with the friends we've already talked about or with about this process. Hopefully, we can do make like a 6 month update at one point, maybe in the middle of the year, so we can keep people updated, because people in our community kind of love the more gathering data points and making predictions and so on. But yeah, again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It was amazing.
Amazing. Perfect. So yeah, this was the fourth episode of Fireside. Take care, everyone, and see you in the next one.